There was no fight, no yelling. You simply chose to put yourself first for once, and suddenly everyone around you lost their minds. If you've ever been called selfish for simply wanting basic respect, this video is your mirror. What I'm about to show you will change how you see every relationship in your life. And some people won't like that you know this. Carl Jung, the famous mind doctor, discovered something that changed how we think about minds forever. He found that most people wear masks all day long. He called these masks personas. Think of it like Halloween costumes, but for your personality. You wear one mask at work, another with your family, and another with friends. But here's the scary part. Jung said most people forget who they really are underneath all those masks. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this might surprise you. The Italian thinker Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince over 500 years ago, warned us about something that sounds mean but is actually true. He said being too nice makes you a target. Wait, what? Let me explain this in a way that will blow your mind. You know that tight feeling in your chest when someone gets upset just because you said no? That's not guilt. That's your internal warning camera telling you someone is trying to control you. Your brain knows the difference, even when you don't. Machiavelli taught rulers that people will test your boundaries constantly, not because they're evil, but because it's human nature. When you act like everything affects you deeply, when you jump every time someone shows emotion, you're basically holding up a sign that says, I can be controlled. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. Acting unaffected isn't about being mean or cold. It's about being real. Carl Jung discovered that becoming who you really are means disappointing others. Think about that. The people who get angry when you stop being their emotional support person were never really supporting you anyway. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button because this gets deeper and you're going to want more of this mind detective work. Let me tell you a story that Jung loved to share. He said every person has a shadow, the parts of themselves they hide from the world. Your shadow isn't bad, it's just real. It includes your anger, your needs, your right to say no. But society teaches us to push our shadow down, to pretend we don't have needs, to act like we're happy all the time. Here's what Machiavelli understood about human relationships that most people miss. He said if you show people exactly how to hurt you, they will use it against you. Not because they're terrible people, but because humans naturally look for power in relationships. When you react strongly to everything, you're giving away your power for free. This is going to sound harsh, but you need to hear it. You are not responsible for fixing what others won't face about themselves. That emotional breakdown someone has when you set a boundary, that's their shadow coming out. That's their stuff they haven't dealt with, and you can't fix it for them. Donald Winnicott, another brilliant mind doctor, discovered that we all have two sides, a true self and a false self. Your false self is the people pleaser who jumps when others are upset. Your true self is the one who can stay calm when others lose control. The true self knows that other people's emotions are not your emergency. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Melanie Klein found that how we learn to connect with people as babies shapes how we act in relationships as adults. If you grew up believing that other people's feelings were more important than yours, your brain learned that love means sacrificing yourself. But that's not love. That's a broken emotional blueprint. Are you starting to see the pattern? Comment. I see it now if this is clicking for you. Machiavelli said something that sounds scary, but is actually freeing. He said sometimes you have to choose yourself over pleasing others. Not because you're selfish, but because if you don't protect your own mind and energy, you'll have nothing left to give anyone. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you really are. But here's what no one tells you about this journey. When you start acting like things don't affect you as much, some people will call you changed. They'll say you're not the same person. And you know what? They're right. You're not the same person who let everyone else's emotions control your life. This is your permission slip. You have the right to disappoint people who want you to stay small. Your freedom is not being mean. It is your right. You didn't come into the world to be everyone's emotional support animal. If you've ever felt that guilt creep in when you try to put yourself first, understand this. That guilt's not yours. Someone else put it there. Jung discovered that we often carry emotions that belong to other people. That heavy feeling when you say no, That's not your conscience talking. That's programming from people who benefit when you don't have boundaries. Hit subscribe if you're ready to break free from fake guilt, because we're just getting started. Here's a mind-blowing truth that Machiavelli understood about power. The people who seem the most confident, the ones who act unaffected by drama, they're not cold or heartless. They've just learned something important. You can care about people without letting their emotions control your decisions. Think about it like this. When you're on a plane and the oxygen masks drop, they tell you to put your mask on first before helping others. That's not selfish, it's smart. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anyone. The same thing happens with emotions. If you let everyone else's feelings flood your system, you become useless to everyone, including yourself. Carl Jung said something that might change your life. He said the collective unconscious, those feelings all humans share, includes the need to be free. Every person has a deep need to be themselves without apology. But society teaches us to feel guilty about this need. Machiavelli warned that if you're too predictable in your reactions, people will use your emotions to manipulate you. They'll learn exactly which buttons to push to make you do what they want. But when you act unaffected, when you stay calm in the storm, suddenly you're in control of your own life again. Now some of you are thinking, but won't people think I'm mean? Here's the honest truth. The people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will definitely be upset. But the people who actually care about you will respect your strength. This is hard to accept, but Jung proved it with his research. Some relationships in your life exist only because you don't have boundaries. When you start acting unaffected by manipulation, these relationships will end. And that's not a loss. That's mental surgery removing what was making you sick. You are not imagining this. There's a brain reason it feels so extreme when you first start setting boundaries. Your mind has been trained to see other people's disappointment as danger. But Machiavelli taught us that sometimes disappointing others is the only way to respect yourself. Comment "I choose to be real" if you're ready to stop pretending everyone else's emotions are your responsibility. Here's what happens when you master this skill Jung called individuation. People start treating you differently. Not because you're mean, but because you're no longer available to be their emotional dumping ground. You become someone they respect instead of someone they use. Machiavelli said in The Prince that it's better to be respected than to be loved by people who don't really see you. Think about that. All those people who love the version of you that never says no, do they actually love you, or do they love what you do for them? This might hurt to hear, but most of the love you think you're receiving is actually appreciation for your services. When you stop providing those services, when you start acting unaffected by their emotional storms, you'll find out who actually cares about you as a person. Jung discovered that we all have both masculine and feminine energy inside us, regardless of our gender. The feminine side wants to connect and care for others. The masculine side wants to protect and set boundaries. Most people who struggle with acting unaffected have overdeveloped their caring side and underdeveloped their protecting side. But here's the beautiful part. When you balance both sides, when you can care without being controlled, you become the kind of person others actually want to be around. Not because you're useful, but because you're real. Melanie Klein found that secure people, people who feel good about themselves, don't need constant emotional reactions from others to feel important. They can stay calm when others are upset because they know that other people's feelings don't define their worth. If this resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because understanding your mind is a journey, not a destination. Here's something Machiavelli understood that most people miss. Strategic thinking in relationships isn't about being fake. It's about being smart. When someone is having an emotional breakdown because you set a boundary, responding with more emotion doesn't help anyone. Staying calm, acting unaffected, that's actually the most loving thing you can do. Why? Because when you don't react to someone's emotional manipulation, you force them to find healthier ways to communicate. You're not being mean, you're being a teacher. You're showing them that emotional storms don't work on you anymore. Jung said becoming yourself means disappointing others who want you to stay in your old patterns. This is going to challenge some relationships in your life. Some people will be angry that you're not as easy to control anymore. Let them be angry. Their anger is proof that you're doing something right. You have the right to care about people without letting them drain your energy. You have the right to love someone without letting them control you with their emotions. These aren't selfish thoughts. These are healthy thoughts. Now I know some of you are thinking, but what if I hurt someone's feelings? Here's what Winnicott discovered about true self versus false self. Your false self believes that protecting other people's feelings is more important than being honest. Your true self knows that fake kindness helps no one. Acting unaffected doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself and others to stay strong when emotions run high. It means you're the steady person others can count on, not the person who falls apart every time there's drama. Comment, "This is my story," if you've ever been called selfish for having boundaries. Here's the final piece that ties everything together. Machiavelli and Jung, separated by hundreds of years, both understood the same truth about human nature. People will respect you more when you respect yourself. They will trust you more when you're honest about your limits. They will actually love you more when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. But this transformation isn't instant. Your brain has been trained to see other people's emotions as your responsibility. Breaking that programming takes practice. Every time you stay calm when someone tries to control you with their feelings, you're rewiring your mind for freedom. The people who truly belong in your life will adapt to your new boundaries. They'll learn to communicate without emotional manipulation because you've shown them it doesn't work. The people who don't belong in your life will leave, and that's not a loss. That's liberation. Jung called this process individuation, but I call it growing up. It's finally becoming the adult who can take care of themselves instead of the child who believes everyone else's needs come first. Your awareness has been upgraded. You can't unsee what you now understand about human relationships. Some people use emotions as weapons. Some people mistake your kindness for weakness. Some people will test your boundaries forever if you let them. But now you know Machiavelli's secret. Acting unaffected isn't about being cold. It's about being free. It's about responding instead of reacting. It's about being the calm in someone else's storm without getting swept away. This video is ending, but your journey is just beginning. You now have permission to put your emotional oxygen mask on first. You have permission to care about others without letting them control you. You have permission to disappoint people who want you to stay small. Subscribe for more mind detective work that sets you free. Comment with your declaration of independence from fake guilt. Share this with someone who needs permission to be real. Remember what Jung said, becoming who you really are means disappointing others. Let them be disappointed. Your freedom is not negotiable. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are allowed to act unaffected by manipulation. Welcome to the community of people who choose authenticity over approval. We've been waiting for you.